Well, after last night's debate, and it was unusual, it is obvious the only thing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and California Governor Gavin Newsom have in common is that they are both positioning themselves as the next generation of leadership for their respective parties. Joining me on the morning show, News4JAX political analyst and the head of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, Rick Mullaney. Rick, good morning. Good to have you here once again.
Good morning, Bruce.
So they lobbed insults, and one thing is clear, they are opposites from opposite sides of the political spectrum, opposite sides of the U.S., two sides of the country that seem irreconcilably opposed.
They are, Bruce, and you could see it on display last night. Their difference in styles, different in approach to governance, contrast between California and Florida, but maybe the sharpest contrast last night was regarding Joe Biden. You did see Governor Newsom fully embrace Joe Biden, and in particular defend Bidenomics, and I thought he did it pretty strongly, talking about increased numbers of jobs, low unemployment, the growth in the country. And he also went to the mental fitness of Joe Biden, defending it, and immigration policy, saying they have a plan, but it hasn't been embraced by Republicans. Governor DeSantis, I thought, very effective in rejecting all of that, a sharp contrast. He disagreed on Bidenomics and was pretty effective, talking about grocery prices and how hard it is for people to buy a home with interest rates. He disagreed certainly on immigration, but on the mental fitness of Joe Biden to serve as president, Governor DeSantis certainly took that on. So you saw a sharp contrast, but on Joe Biden in particular, they were absolutely worlds apart.
So let's talk about outcome, what was accomplished. Fair to say that DeSantis had more riding on last night because he needed to lift his campaign for president and probably had more riding on last night. Any substantial gains for him?
You know, Bruce, you're exactly right. He did have more to gain last night. He had more at stake. Let's face it, the Iowa primary is next month. He's running for president. But I thought last night played to two strengths for Governor DeSantis. One is he does his homework, he prepares well, and I thought he demonstrated a great command of facts and substance. But the second thing is, and he hasn't done a great job of this necessarily in the first three debates, the primary debates, is the Florida story. The Florida story is a strong one. You have more people moving to Florida than any state in the country. You have an economy that's booming. The crime rate is down, educational system getting high marks. He had lots to talk about, and this format lent itself to that. Given all that, I think he advanced his cause. But remember, they were talking to two different audiences. The Sean Hannity audience is a Ron DeSantis audience. He's seeking to advance his cause with them, and I think he did.
We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But let me get to Gavin Newsom. He needed to lift the fortunes of President Biden and prove in the short run that he's a team player, an advocate for the president, and prove in the medium term his appeal reaches beyond the West Coast. Beyond the rhetoric, did you get the sense that he may be planning a run for president?
Yes, let's be clear. Gavin Newsom has presidential ambitions and clearly one of the leading figures, if not the leading figure, for 2028. But he's also positioning for 2024. Remember in 1968 when Lyndon Johnson announced he wouldn't seek re-election as president, that was in March. So the clock is ticking now. On Joe Biden, a lot of questions have been raised. And if in fact he doesn't run, or for some reason he cannot run, then what Gavin Newsom is doing is positioning himself for that. And by the way, he advanced his cause last night also. He embraced Joe Biden, he embraced his policies, he was well prepared. Stylistically, he is very formidable. He also had a good night. I'd give the edge to Governor DeSantis, but I think Governor Newsom had a good night.
All right, so now let's get to Sean Hannity. He started off promising to play a neutral role, but I listened carefully to the questions he posed, and they seem to largely be what he plays out on his Fox News show on a regular basis. You think he was neutral?
Bruce, I don't think you had to listen that closely to the questions to come to the conclusion this was not a level playing field. It certainly was biased in favor of Governor DeSantis, and I give Governor Newsom a great deal of credit for coming into that studio in that environment to have that debate, because it wasn't a level playing field. The debate started off with statistics relating to migration from California out, and he talked about how people are leaving to California and how Florida is getting everyone. He had another statistic. Crime is double in California than it is in Florida. Another one on taxes. Taxes are higher in California and they're lower in Florida. And each time the question is, what do you have to say about that, Governor Newsom? And so he took statistics that were favorable in Florida, and that was part of the questions. It wasn't a level playing field. Having said that, I thought both did well. Governor DeSantis took those facts, told the Florida story, and Governor Newsom often would pivot. He wouldn't answer a lot of those questions directly, but he was had well-prepared attack lines for Governor DeSantis, and I thought he was pretty effective.
And in the end, I had to wonder, what's the value of a debate like this? You got red state versus blue state. Other than that, is it something different?
Bruce, last night, and we see these in all the debates, I genuinely like to see if there's anything that we could do to stop it. too personal in the attacks, talking over each other in a way that's very much not productive. I thought the personal attacks and insults really distracted. Having said that, I think there is value in a public policy debate. Last night there was a discussion on crime, on immigration, on education, on parental rights, on abortion, on a whole host of issues that are important to our future. I think there's value. And you had two of the leading figures from each party, one from the Republican Party, one from the Democratic Party. In many ways, both of them, the future of those parties, having that discussion. So do I think there's value? Yes. Do I think it can be even better? I think it can be.
What would make it better? And you and I talked about this before we went on. Is it maybe getting rid of the audience and letting the moderators have more control?
I think two things could dramatically improve these debates. One is to give the moderators the control of the microphone and simply cut off the microphone when someone is speaking over someone or when their time is up. It's simple. We have the technology. We have artificial intelligence. We can certainly cut off the microphone. The other is, I thought last night without an audience went really well. That way the speakers, the debaters don't have to play to that audience. So if you made those two changes alone, I think future debates would be much better.
You have 90 seconds. You can't interrupt. It's a fairer playing field.
Control of the microphone could change the nature of these debates. I think they're reluctant to do it because they actually like that conflict. But if you want to serve the public, I would control the microphones.
I know it's old school, but Robert's Rules of Order.
Yes.
Rick Mullaney, thanks very much. Always a pleasure. We'll talk more. There's another debate next week, so we'll find out what happens. Check.